All right, chapter 4. We're only doing the first section of this chapter. So we'll start with the diversity of microbes. So they are everywhere, right? We use the word We use the word ubiquitous in our lab to basically mean that bacteria are in every nook and cranny on the planet. They're in and on our bodies, and those bacteria are called our normal microbiota or our normal flora. Both terms are fine. The existence of prokaryotes is very important in basically all of life's processes. Most living things depend on microbial action, and they're basically the sort of foundation of many ecosystems. And just from your book, there's some examples of ways that they are helpful in the environment. So they can help form and stabilize soil. They break down organic matter, so things decompose. These are, decomposing bacteria. They can develop biofilms. Many species of bacteria use substances from plant roots, such as their acids, their carbohydrates, nutrients. So some bacteria will grow in association with plants, and in return, the bacteria can metabolize plant substances and release products that help the plant. So the bacteria make substances that go back to the soil and increasing the soil's fertility, therefore helping the plants grow. There are some very salt-loving. They're called halobacteria. Halo is for salt. And they live in salty oceans. They live in the Dead Sea, and they can help with decomposition. And that will then feed, when you decompose something, you break it down, and that then leaves those nutrients for other things to eat. And they're basically everywhere. They can be in the air, they're in the soil, very ubiquitous. And one thing we want to talk about here is fixing or capturing some elements. We'll talk about nitrogen fixation. So this is what we talked about, the association with plants. There are a special, so I do want you to remember the rhizobium, because this is the only time you'll hear rhizobium. And this is basically the genus that is going to find a home in the roots. So all these like nodules you see right there, right here, all these like weird growths on the roots of this plant, those are packed full of these nitrogen fixing bacteria, the rhizobium. So nitrogen is a limiting compound for growth. So if you get fertilizer, and you want your plants to grow better, the fertilizer is going to contain nitrogen, because nitrogen in the air is in N2 form. And I don't know how much chemistry you remember, or maybe this is new, but nitrogen, when they're bound together as N2, there is a triple bond between those two nitrogen atoms, which is very difficult to break. Lightning can break it apart and make a usable form of nitrogen, but living things like these plants can't break the N2 bond. So what happens is these bacteria they have an enzyme that can easily break the bond from nitrogen gas in the air, and then they can make other kinds of compounds that the plant uses to grow. And then the plant helps the bacteria by, the bacteria can use some products from photosynthesis to live in association. So this is a great symbiotic relationship, where it's basically a mutualistic kind of relationship, where both of these entities are benefited from the relationship, right? The nitrogen fixing rhizobium gives nitrogen compounds to the plant, and the plant gives products for the bacteria to live. So plants that have these are, a lot of our beans, right? All the legume plants, alfalfa, peas, clover. And the rest of this is just looking at some diversity. So there are deep sea bacteria that can actually sense oxygen, move to oxygen, pretty cool. Symbiosis. The next topic is symbiosis. So the word symbiosis just means living together, like living with another living organism, right? So a lot of people mistake symbiosis by being like a happy, symbiotic relationship as being good, but there are all kinds of relationships between two organisms. So we'll just move through these. Mutualism is a kind of relationship where they're both of the organisms are benefited. So the rhizobium example would be a mutualistic relationship. Amensalism and commensalism are just flipped, where one guy is harmed in the relationship and the other one's unaffected. In commensalism, one is benefited and the other one's unaffected. Neutralism, you're neutral, right? So both parties live together in the same area, in the same niche, but they are unaffected by each other. And then parasitism is where one population benefits and it harms the other one. So there's some examples of these on the next slide. So we have a mutualistic relationship with E. coli. So E. coli in our gut, in our large intestine, actually live there happily because we give it, nutrients. Our intestines give the bacteria nutrients, but the bacteria, E. coli, actually make vitamin K. So that is beneficial for us. So we both have a benefit from E. coli living in our gut. And E. coli has a benefit from living in our gut. Amensalism, so there's a bacteria called Staphylococcus epidermidis, and then this acnes, Clostridium acnes, is unaffected by the antibiotics they make. So in order to live on your skin, think about germ warfare, right? You have a lot of different germs, and in order to survive in that environment, everybody's competing for that living space in the food. So most actually microbes will make a compound that will kill off other microbes. These can target and kill other potential pathogens on human skin, but we are not affected, right? We're unaffected. Commensalism is where Staphylococcus epidermidis uses the dead cells of human skin as nutrients. So this is where one is neutral. We are neutral because we don't care that our dead skin cells are being eaten by Staphylococcus epidermidis, but Staphylococcus epidermidis is benefited by the food that we're giving it, our dead skin cells. Neutralism is where no one cares. So it's the coexistence of metabolically active bacteria and endospores. So those can coexist. They don't bother each other. When the endospores become vegetative, they don't bother the other vegetative cells. So they can just live together and not be bothered, I guess, by each other. And then lastly, parasitism. So we know what a parasite is, right? Most of our pathogens are going to be parasites because, or all pathogens are parasites because what they do is they enter into our body and they are benefited because now they have a cell to infect, they have nutrients, they have a place to live. But for us, right, they are going to make toxic substances, they're going to cause disease, and so we're negatively impacted. So parasitism is a plus-minus relationship. One is benefited, one is not, or one is harmed. And then some other diversity, halophiles. So again, halo is for salt, phile is for loving, and there are halophiles that love to live in these extremely salty environments like the Dead Sea. Then there's our microbiome, right? So our microbiome has a various amount. So don't think that it's just us on our bodies. We are actually harboring a lot of different kinds of species of bacteria. We have archaea in our body. We have viruses that live in our body. We have parasites in our body. We have fungi that live in our body. So all of the microbes can be found in our body. Most of the time, they don't cause any disease. So we call those microbes our normal microbiota. You can also call them resident microbiota because they don't change over long periods. They basically stay stable over long periods of time. Then you have commensal microbiota, which is it's like basically normal microbiota, but they benefit us. They benefit from us without causing any harm to us. So commensal is basically a positive and then like a neutral relationship. And then lastly, we have transient microbiota, where these microbes come and go, right? They're transient, so they don't stay as part of our normal microbiota. So think about like if you're in the soil, working in the garden, you might have, new bacteria on your hands. You might have breathed in something, but your immune system will get rid of it, or you'll wash your body and remove them. Okay, so they're not considered microbiota, or they're not considered our normal flora. And something like an infection would be an example of a transient microbiota. So it enters your body, but you can get rid of it. It's not going to stay there for long periods of time. Here's a bioluminescent bacteria, really cool. These bacteria can glow, and a lot of our deep sea creatures use these bacteria as their form of bioluminescence. And this is an example of a mutualistic relationship where this bacteria helps to colonize and lives with this squid. The squid benefits from their bioluminescence. The bacteria, of course, benefit by having a place to live. There are bacteria that are photosynthetic. They're called purple and green bacteria. They just make little pigments that color them purple and green, and they do perform photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria is another kind of bacteria that can live in watery environments, and some of them can produce neurotoxins. So we'll talk about that later as well. So we already talked about this halobacteria. So halophiles are usually in the domain Archaea because this is kind of an extreme environment for us. Remember, Archaea is sort of extremophiles. So this is a very salty region that you can see bacteria because it gives off a color. Oh, and that's it. So that is the end of chapter 4.